Alright, my here, back again, got some magic going on, so tell your friends. So I'm gonna do this little rundown of the update of the blue-red spells deck. There's a few iterations of the spells deck. One of them was sort of prowess-based with the prowess creatures. One was a tutelage deck that mostly drew cards and just burned as much as they could while the tutelage milled them out. And the last one is the one I'm doing, which is Burn. I've actually always thought Burn was kind of... Well, I mean, the prowess version was about equal to Burn. I thought the tutelage one was good last season, but it's worse now that there's so much aggro. Because Copter has made everybody want to play aggro. Burn is weird because it runs on 2 axes. Against slow decks... sometimes you just get to, like, they don't get to interact with your creatures, so all their little kill spells for all your creatures, like, there's not that many creatures, like 5. So, and these are all of them, basically, is Jace, Vryn, Prodigy, and Thermo Alchemist. If they want to kill these, you know, what are you going to do? You just burn everything to the face. Dealing with Planeswalkers is actually not that big of a deal. In fact, you can ignore most of them. Like, you can ignore Liliana a good percentage of the time. Sometimes you have to, like, ping her once, maybe. But Gideon is the one that beats this deck. Gideon on turn 4 is just really, really hard to beat. In the last video, which was an aggro deck, of course, black-red aggro, I talked about how Galvanic Bombardment was better in that deck because of how the high percentage of the time that you can't... well, the thing is Galvanic Bombardment can get higher than 3, but the reason why I like Fiery Impulse in this deck is because you do get Spell Mastery more reliably, and that 3 damage on your first Fiery Impulse is really good against Copter. Whereas in that black-red deck, you will much less frequently have Spell Mastery, so the Galvanic Bombardment's upside of potentially doing 4 or 5 is, well, not likely. It's some marginal amount better than Impulse, but Impulse is better in this. I tried to get Galvanic Bombardment, and I was annoyed at how many times I couldn't do 3 damage when I needed to do 3 damage. And Fire Impulse almost always does 3 damage when you need it to in this deck. This is a deck that was in the last format. It was very, very popular. It was like 20% of the meta. If you watch my meta analysis video, it's just very high percentage. A lot of them ran Take Inventory. I actually think it's a good choice. It's even better now because before it used to be you would just take inventory and hope that you got there off your draws. But now with Cathartic Reunion, you can actually discard a Take Inventory just to draw 3, and then your second Take Inventory that you draw to when you're drawing 3 here rather than drawing 1. When you're drawing 3, you're much more likely to reach that second Take Inventory. And so I think that the combination of 4 ofs there is very good. When you're burning, you need things that go to the face. The least obvious one is Touch of the Void. I ran 4 of these in last season, but I've now cut 2 of them for 2 Fateful Showdown, which I'll talk about in a minute. Even though this is sorcery and it doesn't kill Copter, this is fine. I actually like access to this because sometimes you want to exile a Green Warden of Marasa. This doesn't actually kill it by itself, but sometimes you can... you know, like Fiery Impulse and then Touch of the Void. It's pretty important to deal with Green Warden of Marasa if you're not immediately going to kill them, because whatever they get back is going to be terrible more often than not. And it hits pretty hard. The other suite of burn is just typical, like Fiery Temper is just, you know, you don't get to Madness it that often, but you do get to Madness it off Collective Defiance sometimes, Cathartic Reunion, and Fateful Showdown as well. When you have 5 mana, you can deal damage to the face, and then with your last mana, you can Fiery Temper, and that's enough. There's both Chandras in here. I don't know, actually. I think that Chandra Flamecaller is on average better, but this is fine because it does do 2 damage. It does ramp you. I have actually played Chandra plus done 2 damage, and if she survives, I will give like 2 mana to ramp into this Chandra, because this Chandra kills Planeswalkers, and if you're on an empty board, which you often are against these aggro meta, like all these burn spells kill aggro pretty quickly. You have an empty board a lot of the time. Bedlam Reveler is kind of a creature, but realistically, this is just a draw 3 that discards your hand. It's very infrequent that I actually swing with this thing, but it's there if you want to. I have won games with it. You know, it's done 4 or 5 damage every once in a while, but usually when you're going against decks that can't use removal on anything and you finally play a creature, they just kill it. Of course, Fevered Vision is the cornerstone of this deck. It's actually one of the best things you can draw. If your opponent goes 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop on the play and you have Fevered Visions, it's pretty miserable because they're emptying their hand and you're not actually doing anything that kills those creatures. But if you're under not too much pressure, it's worth taking 2 or 3 damage to get a Fevered Visions out and start rolling on them. The other new addition is Dynavolt Tower. This is worse in some cases than Fevered Visions and better in other cases. If you can get this out, and there's been a couple cases where I've been safe enough to get 2 of them out, your opponent almost can't win. Getting 4 energy per spell, especially when you're drawing and burning and drawing and burning, like it just gets out of control. Sometimes with Dynavolt Tower and a combination of like Fiery Temper and a Fateful Showdown, which I'll talk about in a second here, you can do like 15 damage in 1 turn all of a sudden. I was in a game just yesterday where I had no creatures on board. I just had 1 Dynavolt Tower with like 6 or 8 energy, and they had 3 planeswalkers out, and they had 3 creatures out, and I was at like 4 life, and they were at 15, and I Fateful Showdown end of turn, and discarded Fiery Impulse, and the Fateful Showdown did 6 damage, and the Fiery Impulse did, or the Fiery Temper did 3 damage, and then I tapped the Dynavolt Tower and did 3 damage, and then I untapped with my new hand and did 3 damage. I mean, I could have done 21 damage. It was absurd. Like, I could have just kept going forever. Fateful Showdown, sometimes it does a low amount of damage, but it actually does a lot of damage quite often. And if you get a hand full of lands, you can discard them all and do damage. This just converts hand size into damage. It's instant speed, so if you really, really need to kill a planeswalker end of turn or kill a creature that's going to kill you, this does an okay job at doing it some percentage of the time. Most of the time you want to just finish somebody off with this. You get 5 mana, do however much with this, discard a Fiery Temper, get a whole new hand end of turn. Usually there's burn in it. This is pretty much the whole deck. There's a couple things, a couple tricks to the trade here that's, I hope, show up in these games I'm going to show you, but there's no guarantee they'll come up. And I don't always think of them unless I'm in the moment. But I will say that one of them is when you have Fevered Visions on board and you're planning on Fateful Showdowning, but you don't want them to counterspell. This actually comes up every once in a while where you're afraid of their untapped mana, but they don't have but they're all tapped out. You can actually wait till your end of turn, draw the extra card off Fevered Visions, and then Fateful Showdown to get 1 extra damage in at your end of turn. You just got to allow the Fevered Visions to trigger first. That's just one of the tricks. I guess the last thing I'll say before I get into a game is Exquisite Firecraft. It has Spell Mastery where it can't be countered, so if you happen to be going against those counter decks, you know, using all your other spells first until you have the Spell Mastery to finish them off, because sometimes they'll bend, control decks are a bend but not break strategy, so sometimes they'll allow themselves to go down to 5 or whatever, and if you can just manage to get any 1 damage in somewhere, and then you have this Exquisite Firecraft, they're just going to be sitting there with mana open to counter you, and they won't be able to. But sometimes you just fire off burn. And yeah, I'll get some games and we'll see if you can see some cool stuff happen. Yeah, so even though Spells was popular in the last format where there was a lot of control, I think the tutelage version was better in that against control, but now that there's more aggro, I think the burn version is better because you have more interaction with those fast creatures. This hand isn't great, but it's serviceable. It has a way to draw cards and a Fevered Visions. The awkward thing is by the time we want a Cathartic Reunion, unless we draw another land or Well, yeah, pretty much another land. There's not going to be too much we want to discard to this Cathartic. But you also have to realize that when you discard lands to Cathartic, there's a decent percentage chance you're going to get at least one land out of those 3 cards you draw. And speaking of aggro, we are against it. And incidentally, we will be killing this thing and not Catharticing. We're going to do it end of turn because, or in response possibly to an enchantment. We'll see. But you want the least amount of things on board when you put a Fevered Visions on board because you're definitely going to take damage. Like if he just plays another creature, that's fine. We'll just kill one of them. You got to be very careful when you're playing a deck, because we're playing a deck that does not have Smuggler's Copter, so you got to be a little more wary about what's going on. We're going to kill this. If he happens to suit this up with an enchantment or play some haste guy, that's unfortunate, but I still want to Fevered Visions first. Even against aggro, I would like to Fevered Visions. And we'll just take our licks for one turn. It could be bad if he plays the haste vampire, the 4/3 haste, but it's a chance I'm willing to take because we have Cathartic, discarding land and Fiery Temper to kill it, and that's the worst case scenario. Just because you don't want to go low ever against mono red. And feeding them new cards seems bad, but it's actually not. I mean, it's not. Okay, he did have a haste guy, so it's effectively the same annoyance, but we will deal with it with the Cathartic Reunion. It's usually better to do instant speed, but since we can't Cathartic at instant speed, we're just doing what we gotta do. Well, I'd like to get that out, but the coast is not clear. So we're gonna Cathartic. A lot of the times you want to burn to the face, but against aggro, you really need to interact with their creatures until you get some stable position. And this Chandra here is likely to be the point where we stabilize. I think he's thinking about maybe Titan strengthening his 1/1 just to get more damage in while shields are down. Infectious Bloodlust would be the worst, but that's pretty rough. Definitely want a Fiery Impulse right here. Touch of the Void. There's an argument to be made for Chandra and then plussing and killing one thing and letting him come at this Chandra with his creatures. I think that's what I'm going to do. Because I don't actually care if this Chandra dies. Then because he can pump, we'll kill this thing. Fateful Showdown, usually one of the best draws. Not actually great against aggro, but it's fine. It's like a non-bow with these Bedlam Revelers because they discard each other. But this deck doesn't actually care about getting rid of good cards sometimes, because you're just going to draw all the same stuff. Okay, so he did have an enchantment, so he's going to get right at Chandra right now and kill her. Hopefully he plays another creature and we can just use this other Chandra. We have to draw a land, but we could possibly do that. In worst case scenario, we can Thermo Alchemist, Collective Defiance. Oh, he's coming after us. Okay. That seems not smart, because the Chandra can just kill this thing right now. He may have like 2 Titan strengths, in which case, if we took 11 damage, I think we would die next turn. Okay, we're only taking 5, so that's dodge that bullet. Sure. I'm going to try and kill as many things as I can here. And that pretty much does it. Let's see, I can +2, which gives me... Yep, I'm going to do that. This Chandra, as good as she is actually less important than just wiping his board, I think. Is there anything else I can do, though? I could minus this Chandra and Collective Defiance and leave him with 1 guy. That's actually not bad either. That saves this Chandra for later. So I can do that. And then I can put this blocker in the way. Oh. 4 damage to this, 3 damage to this. Hopefully he has a fiery temper. Yep. Of course. Well, he must have burn in his hand. I am getting slightly nervous. We do need to survive this turn. It's certainly no guarantee. Yep, we are dead. Well, that didn't exactly work out, but he did have a lot of the burn and a lot of the creatures. I guess we gave it to him with Fevered Visions, but you do what you do. Alright, jamming in for game 2. Oh, here we go. So this is a loss because this guy is a cheater. Like, he's just legitimately a guy that cheats at this game. But I'm going to record it because, well, I mean, he's been a cheater since this game first came out and they never fix it. So this 1CWHBC, see what will happen is you'll go against this guy and it'll seem legitimate. And then as soon as he gets his combo of things, like any spell that has X, he can make X whatever he wants, no matter how much mana it is or whatever. So the last time I played him recently, his whole thing was he makes Brilliant Spectrum. Even though he only has like 2 colors in this blue-red deck, he can make Brilliant Spectrum draw him as many cards as he wants. So he gets tutelage on board, Brilliant Spectrums for his entire deck, which mills our entire deck, and he just wins out of nowhere. It seems like he tries to win legitimately for a little while, and then he doesn't. It's kind of funny because like I'm gonna lose 2 games in a row with this spells deck. It's actually the deck that brought me to 40 initially this season, so it's actually just like the most successful deck I've had this season. But I mean, you know how videos go. As soon as I want to do something, I don't get to do it, so whatever. We'll try and win. This guy obviously is 40 because he never loses. I actually beat him 1 time a long time ago. It was like a combination of having the exact counterspell I needed at the exact right time. I just got him. It's pretty surprising. see. Of course, we're not drawing anything we need, like land. Seems like a familiar story. Yep. It's almost like he cheated to make our hands not good. Yep, there he is with all his answers too. Fortunately, we can just burn. So he doesn't play any creatures in this deck besides his man land, so it's pointless having stuff that kills only creatures. If we can get to 3 mana, we can just do 3 to the face over and over again. Yeah, so we're just basically ready to lose. If he has a Brilliant Spectrum in hand, he just wins instantly. So, all right. I guess the best one is just Touch the Void first. And we'll see if he just is instantly going to win right this second. I don't really know why this guy does it. Like, he's been doing it for years now. And I just don't know what gratification he get. He must go to like the forums, like Reddit, and look and see everybody bitching about him, and he must get off on that. That's the only actual explanation for him doing this all the time. He loves to wait until he's about to lose to fuck us too. I want to believe I have a chance to win, but I don't. Go with this one first. Next turn with Fateful Showdown and a land, we could do 7 damage to him suddenly, then untap and burn him. Unlikely to happen though. He actually just milled a bunch of red cards in a row too. That's crazy. It's a lot of triggers off one thing. I really just want to draw a land more than anything else next turn. That is not quite the land that I had in mind. But okay, so next turn I would, if I played this now, I would have 4 plus 1, 7, 3 plus 1, 4 plus 1. Alright, so I guess next turn I would have I could do 7 damage with Fateful Showdown. I guess I could have Collective Defiance there, and then if I drew another land, I could have double Fiery Tempered. That's probably stupid, but whatever. It seems pretty likely that we'll just die on this turn right this second. We'll see. I really wish I would have played right, because beating this guy is like the most exciting thing ever. Because with my luck, I'll draw a land and get punished for not having done it correctly with the Collective Defiance first. Speaking of Collective Defiance, he's gonna mill us 20 times. That wasn't so bad. It was only 12 times. Did draw a land, so it was punishment. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I actually just have him dead, but I kind of want to respond to whatever he's going to do. Because I don't want to get counterspelled. He does have counterspell mana open. I want to just win. Prism Array. See, I think he can make like this X. Yeah, see, color's 100. Wow. Wow, I was just gonna win. And the game fucking crashed. Wow, that is so irritating. Because he basically tapped out. He didn't have the mana to counterspell me. And I was just showing, just then, that he had 127 colors on that Prism Array. And it crashed. Like, what the fuck, game? What the fuck? When I was gonna win? When I was gonna beat that fucking douche? When I was gonna win? And you crashed. Fuck, man. God, that fucking enrages me. Oh. That is ungoddamn believable. I had it. You guys saw that, right? Like, I had 7 damage. Like, 4 on the Fateful Showdown plus 3 on the Fiery Temper with no counterspell mana open for him. And proof that he was cheating with 127 colors listed. Oh, God. Oh, God. That is just the most annoying. That he got let off the hook right then. Oh, God. Jesus. So mad that the game crashed when I was about to beat that fucking cheater. It's unbelievable. Alright. Back to the deck tech portion. This is a good hand. If he has a creature deck, it's especially good. He's got a creature deck, so we're doing A-okay. It's okay to kill this thing and not in response because people don't play Infectious Bloodlust that often anyway, and he doesn't have enough mana to play even a 1-drop and Infectious Bloodlust, so. I think it's correct to still play the Fevered Visions and feed him cards, even though that cost us in the first round. Although he had a lot of shit, but I'm still not absolutely positive that it cost us. We could alternately Dynavolt Tower, which is a little safer against like more creatures, but I like to draw more cards. I think getting this out early is usually better. Also, if we draw a land, we can still Dynavolt Tower and Fiery Impulse and do the same thing, except we draw an extra card and do two extra damage. Double Dynavolt Tower is like a crippling way to destroy somebody if the coast is clear. But we really need to draw a land in order to start Dynavolt Towering safely. Alms of the Vein. Well, that's interesting. It means he probably has a bunch of similar things like Fiery Impulse in his hand, burn spells to our face. Although him gaining life like that does make the Dynavolt Tower plan slightly worse. Just gonna see how it goes. This machine is kind of the crux of this deck, this burn machine, so we'll see how it works out. Hopefully he doesn't play anything giant like Kalitas. Oh, another Alms? Sure. I It's actually annoying because him gaining 3 life each turn is just like the opposite of what we want. I think double Alchemist is probably best. Even though, well, yeah, it certainly has to be at this point. Better than Chandra. Chandra's actually sort of useless right this second. Probably kill one of these. Yep. I suspected he had some stuff like that in his hand. I may play Chandra just to see if he attacks Chandra. If he has only burn in his hand, then he won't. But, like, if we play Chandra and he just attacks us, we're just dead. Yep. He did good. That's more burn. I guess it was a mistake to play those guys. Jesus. Alright. So I'm going to play this and not take inventory just in case he can pilot this thing. Take inventory will only give us 4 energy. We need 6. He is currently outburning us by a lot right now. I don't think I'll ever play another creature for the rest of this game. It's at 20 life. It's pretty amazing. This will be a good demonstration of how hard we can burn if we successfully burn his ass. I'll take inventory first, see if we can find an untapped land to Chandra up. Although I probably won't Chandra, because I want to leave mana open still. Yep. I'm not going to Cathartic either. I could Cathartic. I could Cathartic and Impulse to the face, and then I'd have 12 energy. So he might actually have enough burn to kill us. And since he gained that 6 life, it's pretty rough. I can get him to 11 here. I will. That Chandra. Okay, so we can Fateful Showdown. Let's see, if we played Fevered Visions, that'd be 2 things. 1, 2. So we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 2. We could 7 him with Showdown. We just 7 him right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know, I guess in case he somehow gains life, it's still correct to do it the weird way. I think he was dead even without playing this stuff, but... Go to end of turn. Draw. Draw. Showdown. So that's pretty much the deck. Those were 3 weird games. Funnily enough, the first legit loss in the first game It's probably the most real game of all those games, but I mean, I hope you enjoy the deck. Decklist is below, and yep, that's that one. See you next time.